He sold his pregnant wife to settle a debt, but the buyer was her ex, a billionaire whose love for her shocked the world. Welcome, dear friends, to Beyond Color Stories. I'm your storyteller, James, and from my heart to yours, I hope you're wrapped in peace and feeling inspired today. May this space offer you hope, healing, and a little magic as we journey through these unforgettable stories. Before we begin, can I ask something meaningful? How would you rate our storytelling so far? And how would you score my beloved wife, Selena, who pours her soul into every tale out of 10? And if Selena ever launched her own channel, who would walk beside her in support? Let us know in the comments. Your words mean the world to us. If you haven't yet, please subscribe so you never miss the love and emotion we share here. Now take my hand. Let's step into today's powerful story. The room was thick with unspoken sorrow. Jenny stood by the window, bathed in fading sunlight, her golden brown skin aglow, and her pregnant belly catching the last warmth of day. Life stirred inside her, her son, Max, a heartbeat of hope in a house gone cold. But the chill she felt came from fear, not air. Her husband, Michael, paced behind her like a man drowning. Gone was the man who once held her with love. What remained was debt, desperation, and a storm brewing in his eyes. Jenny pressed her hand to her belly, Max kicking gently, a reminder she wasn't alone. "Michael, please," she whispered, voice barely steady. "We can fix this together." But he spun around, eyes hollow. "Another way," he barked. "There is no other way. We're out of time, out of options." His laughter was cruel and broken. "You and that baby are all I have left to sell." Jenny's knees buckled beneath her as she collapsed to the floor, her arms protectively cradling her unborn child. Her lips quivered. "I won't let them take you," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. But the truth was loud in her bones. Michael had made his choice. The man who once whispered dreams into her ear now gambled with their reality. She wasn't his wife anymore, just a pawn in his losing game. Her tears dropped silently, soaking the floor, while the rhythm of Max's kicks drummed against her palm. She had never felt more helpless, more lost. Hope flickered but dimmed in the face of betrayal. She held on to Max tighter, praying someone, anyone, would see her, would save her. But no one came. Not yet. Days later, Jenny stood in front of a mirror in a suite that reeked of wealth and discomfort. The silk gown Michael forced on her shimmered like moonlight, but it felt like chains on her skin. The fabric flowed like a river of lies, draping her swollen belly, her identity reduced to spectacle. Her reflection stared back with haunted eyes. "The richer they are, the more they'll pay," Michael had said, like she was a luxury item on display. Her stomach twisted with shame and fury. Alone that night, she ran her hands across her belly and whispered to Max, "We're stronger than this. I'll keep you safe." The city sparkled outside, but her world had never felt darker. This wasn't just a gown, it was a warning. The auction hall was carved from shadows and secrets. Velvet curtains muffled the sounds of the outside world, isolating the stage like a shrine to sin. Jenny stood before a sea of strangers, powerful men cloaked in wealth, eyes gleaming with want. None saw her. They only saw what she carried. Bids started low, rising quickly. She felt like a statue, frozen and paralyzed as the numbers soared. $1 million, $3 million, $7 million. She clenched her fists, her breath catching, a storm swelling in her chest. She wanted to scream, to run. And then, like lightning, one voice shattered the room. 10 million. The hall went silent. Jenny turned toward the voice. Her heart stuttered. Her breath caught. It was John, her first love, her once upon a time. Standing tall in the shadows of wealth and greed, he cut through the chaos like a sword of purpose. His voice had been thunder, his presence a storm. Michael's smirk twitched with doubt as John stepped forward. "Sold," Michael muttered bitterly, unaware he had just auctioned away more than he could ever buy back. "She belongs to me," John said, not with possession, but with protection. His hand reached for hers with reverence, not claim. Jenny hesitated, then let him pull her close. Around them, silence pulsed. A woman once discarded now, wrapped in the arms of a man who saw her as his world. Jenny's heart thudded in disbelief. John didn't look at her like she was broken. He looked at her like she was sacred. He touched her hand like it was made of light, as if the universe had frozen to let him feel her again. He didn't speak, not yet. He held her, shielded her, revered her. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the flood of emotions she'd buried for too long. And then, like time itself held its breath, John kissed her forehead, not in lust, not in desperation, but in devotion. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered. His voice, low, velvet, sure, threaded into her soul like a key to a locked room. Her tears spilled as he turned to shield her from the world once again. Camera flashes burst like fireworks as John let her out. Reporters swarmed like bees, questions crashing through the air. But John didn't flinch. He didn't let go. The doors to a waiting limousine opened, and he guided her in with gentle force, a shield against the noise. The door shut behind them with a hush that felt like closing a chapter. Inside, silence wrapped around them. Jenny's breath trembled. Her eyes darted to John's, searching. She found no anger, no judgment, only warmth, only home. He didn't speak, not yet. He waited. When he finally reached out, his hand landed softly on the curve of her belly, and the world changed. Jenny gasped. He hadn't known. No one had. But now his hand was there, and Max kicked, a small flutter of life responding to something familiar. John looked at her, awe spilling into a quiet smile. "I'll be the daddy this child deserves," he said, and Jenny's last wall crumbled. Tears poured freely, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, held, chosen. She leaned into him, and he lifted her easily into his lap, cradling her like a fragile miracle. "You're safe now," he whispered, kissing her temple, her cheek, her hair, anchoring her to the truth that this moment was real. And Jenny cried, not because she was weak, but because she was finally allowed to. And John held her as if nothing else mattered, as if his entire empire had led him here. She pulled back just slightly, her voice shaking. "Why did you come back?" He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath slow. "Because without you, none of it means anything." And she believed him, not out of hope, but because it rang like gospel in his eyes. Max kicked again, stronger this time, and Jenny grabbed John's hand and pressed it tight to her belly. And in that tender space, where past pain met present promise, John whispered, "I'll protect you both with everything I have." Outside, the world kept spinning, but inside the limousine, a new story was being born. Jenny wasn't alone. She wasn't lost. She wasn't property or forgotten. She was loved. She was chosen. And in the cocoon of that moment, between brokenness and redemption, a family began again, wrapped in love, in fire, and in the unshakable promise of forever. But showing up himself, coat slung over one arm, hand always reaching for hers the second she stepped into the clinic, eyes scanning her face like she was the only vital sign he ever needed. And during each ultrasound, while Jenny's breath held and her fingers clutched his tighter, John would lean in, his jaw softening, his heart in his throat every time that flicker of life bloomed across the screen. He asked questions, a million of them, not because he doubted the answers, but because he wanted to understand, to know, so he could carry every piece of her journey beside her. And afterward, he'd take her for pancakes or dumplings or whatever her cravings commanded, never once checking his phone, never once rushing the moment. He became fluent in cravings, in moods, in the aching rhythms of her changing body. He studied her like scripture. And Jenny, who had once folded into herself like a wounded bird, began to unfold, not just into comfort, but into a quiet astonishment, that he had become this man, that somewhere between the ashes of what they were and the unknowns of what waited ahead, John had built something unshakable, not a promise of perfection, but a vow of presence. Even on the days she woke with anxiety clawing at her throat, afraid the happiness might be a mirage, John never flinched. He would simply gather her in silence, hold her while the storm passed, whispering truths into her hair like a lifeline. You don't have to be okay for me to stay. I stay because I love you, not because you smile. He took her scars and didn't try to erase them. He kissed them, memorized them, let them be the map that led him back to her. And when the baby kicked hard one evening and she gasped from both shock and joy, John dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes, forehead pressed to her stomach like it was sacred. You feel that, Max? That's your mama. That's the sound of a warrior. And Jenny, once a fortress of self-preservation, once a woman who flinched from love that looked too much like dependency, found herself melting in ways she hadn't dared believe were possible. Because this wasn't some redemption story, it was a resurrection of her hope, of her trust, of her belief that home wasn't just a place, but a person. And each time John kissed her like a prayer, held her like a vow, laughed like a man reborn, she knew. This wasn't just healing. This was a love story rewritten in the quietest, fiercest ways. It wasn't the fear of a fractured future that filled her now, but the quiet fullness of something sacred, rebuilding inside her, piece by piece, breath by breath. And when John, paint-stained and sleep-deprived, crawled into bed beside her and curled his arm around her belly like it was the most natural home he'd ever known, Jenny realized something had shifted, not just in him, but in her. This wasn't just a man making amends or checking boxes. This was a father by heart, a partner in soul. And when he whispered, "We're almost there, love. Just wait till Max sees us," she believed him, not because of his strength or success, but because in 1,000 tiny moments, he had shown her what real devotion looks like. As her eyes drifted shut in the hush of midnight, lulled by the steady rhythm of his breath, she knew this chapter wasn't about survival anymore. It was about arrival, a family, quietly formed in the sanctuary of love. And nothing, not the past, not fear, could unwrite that now. The kitchen light was soft that night, humming gently as wind whispered against old window panes. Jenny sat curled on the arm of the couch, legs tucked beneath her, a steaming mug of cinnamon tea warming her hands. John had made it just how she used to drink it, back before everything had gone quiet inside her. Her eyes were distant, but her body had begun to uncoil in his presence, inch by inch, like a flower daring to bloom after a brutal winter. John sat cross-legged on the floor, across from her, just listening, as though every word she spoke might be the most important thing he'd ever hear. "I don't know why I'm still scared of the dark sometimes," she said softly, voice fragile, like glass on the edge of breaking. John didn't move, didn't rush to respond. He just nodded once, eyes filled with quiet understanding. "There were nights I didn't know if I'd wake up again," she whispered, her fingers tightening around the mug. "Michael would lock me in the guest bathroom if I asked too many questions. Sometimes for hours. I'd sit in the silence, hunger making my stomach cry so loud I started pretending it was a song, just so I wouldn't lose my mind." John's jaw tightened. His knuckles went white against the edge of the table. But he didn't speak. He just stood and walked to her, kneeling beside the couch like it was an altar, and she, a broken saint. She didn't stop him when he reached for her hand. For the first time in years, she didn't flinch. "I thought I'd die there," she murmured, eyes shimmering but dry. "I thought Max would never remember how to smile with his whole face." Her voice cracked. John gently set the mug aside and pulled her into his arms. Not urgently, not with pity, just quietly, like he knew she needed it more than air. "Never again," he breathed against her hair. And that was when her body gave out. The sob burst from her throat like a storm breaking after too long, and she trembled in his arms as years of silence clawed their way out. He didn't hush her, didn't try to fix it. He just held her tighter with every tremor, whispering words she could barely hear. "You're safe now. I've got you. I'll never let you go again." Her face pressed against his chest. Her fingers gripped his shirt like it was the only thing tethering her to the world. He stroked her back slowly, rhythmically, like a lullaby in motion. Hours passed like seconds. When she finally pulled away, eyes swollen but softer, John brushed her cheeks with his thumbs and kissed her eyelids, like sealing a vow over each tear-streaked lash. She looked at him then, really looked, like someone recognizing home in another's eyes. A slow, hesitant smile curved her lips. That night, with Max asleep in the next room, John tiptoed to her bedside, folded a small note, and slipped it under her pillow. You matter. You're not invisible here. It was the first of many. The next morning, Jenny found it. She didn't cry. She just held it to her chest, breathing in something terrifyingly close to hope. Every morning after that, there was a new note. Sometimes it was a memory from childhood. Sometimes just 3 words. You are enough. You are beautiful. You are loved. And Jenny began to glow. Tiny, tentative changes. Her laugh came easier. Her posture eased. Her voice is still soft, grew steadier. She started wearing color again, even if it was just a pink scarf or a blue clip in her hair. John noticed everything. How she hummed while making toast. How she danced when she thought no one was watching. How Max's giggles came more easily when she smiled. Evenings were spent in the living room, after Max had gone to bed, wrapped in old songs from the radio and forgotten dreams. One night, John pulled out a dusty photo album from the hall closet, one she'd left behind long ago. They sat flipping through pages, heads brushing as they leaned in close. Remember this trip? He asked, pointing to a photo of them on a bike trail by the lake. I wore those ridiculous sandals, Jenny laughed. And you dared me to eat that triple scoop monstrosity. You did, John grinned, and threw up behind the ice cream truck 10 minutes later. They laughed until their sides hurt. Later that week, John gave her a delicate silver necklace, its charm engraved with Max's name. No grand gesture, just a quiet offering on the porch, beneath listening stars. You love me more than anyone ever did, she whispered, not meeting his eyes. But when she looked up, John's gaze was already there, brimming with something ancient and unwavering. I always have, he said, and I always will. She reached out then, tracing the lines of his face like she was mapping a home she thought she'd lost forever. That night, she wore the necklace to bed, fingers curled around the charm as she slept. And she didn't dream of locked doors anymore, only open windows and soft laughter. In the weeks that followed, they stayed up late talking about school plays, the treehouse that leaned too far left, and the umbrella he once gave her in a downpour. They talked about the kind of life they wanted now. Not perfect, but honest, gentle, free of demands, full of grace. And slowly she began to believe. Maybe this was her second chance. John watched her rediscover herself like a woman waking from a long winter's sleep, and every night he vowed he'd never let the light leave her eyes again. They baked cookies with Max on quiet Sundays, taught him lullabies and paper planes, laughed more than they cried. On a rainy night when thunder rolled and the lights blinked out, they lit candles and played shadow puppets. John's wolf chased Jenny's bunny across the wall, and Max squealed with laughter. Jenny laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. In that soft candlelight, she looked at John and whispered, I don't know what tomorrow holds, but tonight I'm not afraid of it. And he kissed her temple, murmuring, That's all I need, for you to feel safe today. We'll handle tomorrow together. And she believed him, because for the first time in years, she believed in herself again too, like the most precious gift he'd ever been given. His voice trembled, thick with emotion, but clear, like a man unafraid to be seen. Jenny, he began, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You are the calm in every storm I didn't know I needed. You've taken every shattered part of me and held it with kindness, never asking me to be anything more than myself. I vow to never stop choosing you. In the quiet, in the chaos, in the ordinary days that will one day be our most sacred. I promise to love you gently, fiercely, truly for every breath we get. Jenny's lips parted, trembling, and for a moment she simply stared at him, the tears making her eyes shine like wet morning petals. Then she smiled through them, the kind of smile that was half awe, half surrender. John, she whispered, her voice soft but steady, before you, love was something I feared, a door I was too broken to open. But you didn't knock. You sat outside the ruin, patient, kind, and slowly rebuilt a home with your presence. You've never asked me to hide my scars, only shown me how they made me stronger. I vow to meet you always with honesty, to lift you when you fall, and to love you not just with my heart, but with every breath that carries our story forward. You are my safe place, my home. There was not a single dry eye among their small circle. Friends and family who knew how far they had come, how much pain had been transformed into beauty. When the officiant finally said, "You may now kiss your bride," John didn't hesitate. He pulled her in like a prayer being answered, his hands cradling her face with such reverence it nearly shattered her. Their lips met in a kiss that wasn't just a kiss. It was a sealing of every vow, every unspoken promise, every quiet miracle that had brought them there. The crowd cheered, not loudly but warmly, like a fire that didn't burn but embraced. Afterward, they didn't rush through a reception or speeches. Instead, they walked barefoot through the garden, hand in hand, pausing to admire the lilies, to laugh with guests, to dance slowly beneath the lanterns strung like stars. John cradled her belly often, as if still in disbelief that Max was real, that they were real. As the night wound down and the last candle flickered low, Jenny and John found themselves beneath the arbor once more, alone now, save for the moon and the whisper of wind in the trees. "We did it," she murmured, resting her head on his shoulder. John kissed the top of her head and whispered, "No, you did it. You saved me, Jenny. In every way a man can be saved." And she smiled because she knew that wasn't entirely true. They had saved each other, slowly, quietly, fully. That night, in a small cottage tucked behind the garden, they curled up together, husband and wife, father and mother, hearts stitched together by love and time, and something neither of them had a name for. And when Max kicked again, stronger this time, they both laughed into the quiet, their hands joined over her belly, their lips brushing in the soft glow of the candlelight. The future didn't feel uncertain anymore. It felt invited. In celebration, Jenny pulled back, laughter spilling through her tears, her palm resting gently on the swell of her belly. "He's dancing," she whispered. John dropped to his knees, pressing a reverent kiss to the place where Max had stirred. "We're all dancing," he whispered back. Night fell like a soft blessing, the garden shimmering with candlelight and the distant flicker of stars. Jenny and John swayed slowly to a song only their hearts could hear. Her head rested against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like a prayer answered. In that moment, the world felt still. There was no past to outrun, no future to dread, only now, only love, only the warmth of two souls who had found their way to forever, not by accident, but by grace, by choosing, by believing. As the moon climbed higher, casting silver over white lilies and painting the night in quiet promise, Jenny closed her eyes and felt everything. The ring on her finger, the life moving inside her, the man holding her like she was everything. And she was. She was his everything, and he was hers. The heavy oak door of the honeymoon suite shut softly behind them, sealing the world outside. Candlelight flickered across the walls, casting the room in golden warmth that pulsed with the quiet heartbeat of their love. John's arms were around her at once, gentle, insistent, as though he needed to memorize her, imprint every curve of her soul into his memory. His lips found hers, not with urgency but reverence, a slow, sacred kiss that deepened with the hunger born of years of longing and whispered dreams. Jenny gasped as his hands traced the familiar, yet endlessly new terrain of her body. Her silk gown shimmered under his fingers, slipping from her shoulders like petals in bloom. "I've dreamed of this for years," John murmured, voice thick with emotion as his lips trailed along her collarbone, his fingers gliding where skin met silk. Jenny's eyes fluttered closed, tears rising, of joy, disbelief, and release. That this moment, this man, was finally hers. The air was heavy with the scent of roses and the soft musk of passion. Their bodies moved together in a rhythm as old as time, an unhurried holy communion of love and worship. John adored her, not in spite of the changes to her body, but because of them. Every curve, every mark, every breath of life within her was a miracle he honored with awe. He cupped her belly, fingers spreading reverently over the roundness that cradled their son. I see you, he whispered, kissing the place where their child stirred. I love you both. Jenny's fingers curled into his hair, pulling him closer. Her body arched into his with a hunger that trembled between trust and vulnerability. They wept between kisses, tears of release, of hope, as the shadows of the past dissolved in the light of their love. Time melted around them, their bodies entwined in a dance of devotion and desire. John traced every scar with his lips, every line with his hands, whispering his love into the places she once hid in shame. And Jenny let him. She let him see her, all of her. Their laughter mixed with moans and breathless declarations, rising like a symphony composed for two. Hours passed unnoticed, each moment steeped in reverence, every touch a prayer, every kiss a promise. The silk sheets twisted around them as they lay in each other's arms, hearts beating a rhythm of joy and healing. Max kicked again, a tiny thrum of life that made Jenny gasp and John smile. I've never felt this alive, she whispered, breathless, her head against John's chest. He stroked her hair, fingers soft and sure. You are my home, my heaven, my forever. And with a kiss to her temple, he sealed the vow. In that candlelit stillness, they weren't broken souls trying to rebuild. They were whole, radiant, loved. Their love wasn't rushed. It was a slow-burning flame, one that lit every shadow and warmed every hollowed place. They spoke not with words but with touches, with kisses, with the way John's hand cradled her face or curved protectively over her belly. Dawn crept through the curtains, casting pale light over the room. Jenny's fingers traced lazy circles on John's chest, and he pulled her closer, a silent vow in his embrace. They dreamed aloud, of soft mornings and sleepy giggles, of lullabies and laughter, of building a life not from fear, but from faith. Max stirred once more, and John bent to kiss Jenny's belly, whispering promises that only she and their son could hear. I love you, she whispered, eyes brimming. And I love you, he replied, steady as stone, more than words will ever hold. They drifted to sleep in the hush of love fulfilled, the future glowing bright. But as the first kiss of morning painted the sky, a shadow fell across the doorway. A knock, sharp, cruel, rattled the air like a storm breaking open. Michael stood there, cold, calculating, a ghost clawing its way out of the grave of the past. His sneer sliced the golden quiet, his voice venomous as he demanded control, money, dominance, everything he thought he still owned. But John stood firm, a wall of calm resolve. You lost her, he said, voice low. You sold her. The truth struck like lightning. Michael's face twisted in fury. He hurled threats, courtrooms, lawyers, war. John didn't blink. He dropped a thick stack of signed, sealed documents on the table. The final blow. The past, buried. The grip, broken. Jenny stepped forward then, her voice clear, unwavering. I'm not yours. Never was. Her words struck deeper than any blow, and for the first time Michael faltered. His arrogance cracked. His threats grew frantic. But it was too late. She was no longer his to bend or break. Security arrived, and with John's quiet command, Michael was removed, his presence erased like the final ghost of a nightmare. Jenny wept, not from fear, but freedom, the kind that blooms in sunlight after too many years of shadow. John pulled her close, his embrace a shelter, his voice a vow. You'll never be hurt again. That night, the world was quiet once more. Max kicked gently inside her, a secret celebration. Their love, fierce and unshaken, wrapped around her like a shield. And for the first time in forever, Jenny felt whole. No longer a victim, no longer afraid. They had rewritten their story, not with vengeance but with grace, not with rage but with love. The stars outside burned bright, and within their embrace a new chapter began, where peace reigned, where love endured, and where the past would never again steal the light from their future. Each breath Jenny took carried the weight of both pain and hope, a testament to the strength she had drawn from the deepest corners of her soul. John never left her side, not for a single moment. His hands were steady, firm, and warm, holding hers through every wave of contraction that threatened to overwhelm her. His lips brushed gently across her forehead, planting soft kisses as he whispered words that wrapped around her like a shield. "You're doing so well, love. I'm right here. We're almost there." His voice was a calm anchor amid the storm of agony, grounding her in the promise of new life and a love beyond measure. Hours stretched on, marked only by the symphony of Jenny's determined breaths and John's unwavering presence. His eyes never left her face, reading every flicker of pain, every flush of exhaustion, and every spark of fierce courage. Between tender kisses, he murmured encouragements, reminding her of her strength and the family they were creating amid the uncertainty. "You're the bravest woman I know," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Max is coming, and he's so lucky to have you as his mother." There was a sacredness in the moment, an intimacy beyond words, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them and the new life about to arrive. Time lost its meaning in the haze of contractions and whispered promises. Jenny's world narrowed to the feel of John's hand anchoring her, the warmth of his breath against her cheek, and the rising tide of hope pulsing through he veins. The hospital room was alive with the soft hum of machines, gentle footsteps of nurses, and the quiet prayers of two hearts bound by love. As the sun climbed higher, casting light on the beginning of their new chapter, Jenny pushed with every ounce of strength she had left, her body trembling but resolute. John's voice was steady and soothing, a constant beacon in the wild sea of pain. Then in a sudden burst of life and sound, Max arrived, his vibrant cry piercing the quiet dawn. The newborn's first wail was raw and powerful, a triumphant declaration of existence that filled the room with awe. John's hands trembled as he reached out to hold Max, cradling the fragile bundle as if he were the most precious treasure ever given. The baby's skin was soft and warm against his palms, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze, a perfect snapshot of love made real. Jenny's tears spilled freely as she watched John's face transform with overwhelming pride and tenderness, a reflection of the love that had sustained them through the darkest nights. John reached for the scissors, hands steady despite the storm of emotion inside him. With deliberate care, he cut the cord that had connected mother and child in the womb, severing the last physical tie to the pain and fear that had once threatened to consume Jenny. Holding Max close, John whispered promises no words could fully capture, a vow to protect, to cherish, to love without end. Jenny's gaze softened as she looked at their son, his tiny features already bearing the unmistakable likeness of the man she loved. Through her tears, she whispered, "He looks just like you when you smile." The words carried a depth beyond appearance. They were a testament to the life they had built and the hope they had nurtured through every hardship. John leaned in, kissing Jenny's lips tenderly before placing a gentle kiss on Max's forehead, then returning to Jenny with a hunger that was both fierce and reverent. "I have everything I ever needed right here," he said, voice thick with emotion and certainty. The room seemed to swell with a love so profound it filled every corner, every breath, every heartbeat. Peace settled over them, not the silence of absence, but the deep peace born of triumph, survival, and the sacred bond of family. The cries of new life echoed in the air, a symphony of hope and beginnings. Together they lay, John cradling Max against his chest, Jenny resting her head on John's shoulder. The weight of the past lifted like a distant shadow. In this room, in this moment, nothing else mattered but the life they had brought into the world and the promise of forever they now shared. Max's tiny fingers curled instinctively around John's hand, a silent connection that spoke of love's unbreakable thread. Jenny's breathing slowed, her body exhausted but her heart soaring with a joy beyond words. The sun climbed higher, bathing them in golden light as if the universe itself blessed their new family. They spoke softly, their voices blending with the quiet hum of the room, sharing dreams of first steps, lullabies, and endless mornings filled with laughter and love. John traced patterns on Jenny's skin, memorizing every scar and curve, each one a story of survival and strength, now intertwined with the miraculous new life sleeping peacefully between them. The bond they shared was unbreakable, forged in fire and tempered by love. Each moment was a precious gift, a jewel in the crown of their new beginning. Outside the window, the world continued its endless dance, but inside the room, time belonged only to them. Max's fragile cries mingled with the steady beat of two hearts united as one. They had weathered storms that once threatened to tear them apart, but now they were bound by something stronger than fear or pain, by hope, love, and the beautiful life they had created together. The journey ahead was unknown, filled with both challenges and joy, but John and Jenny faced it hand in hand, their souls forever intertwined. Max's soft breaths grew steady, his tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with the gentle lullabies whispered by his parents. The night passed, carrying away the darkness that once haunted Jenny's days. Now in the light of a new dawn, they were a family, a perfect, imperfect, beautiful family, bound by love's enduring promise. John kissed Jenny once more, his lips lingering as if to seal a sacred vow. She smiled, knowing that with him, she had truly found home.